All right, aspirants, no time to waste. Let's jump right in and decode today's Hindu by synthesizing all 14 news items into a rapid, high-yield explainer. And we are focusing purely on your syllabus foundations. Look, we know the daily current affairs grind can literally feel like drinking from a fire hose, right? So we're going to entirely bypass the noise and look strictly at how today's events map perfectly to your static concepts. Let's get to it.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're hitting economy, polity, IR, and internal security, environment, and wrapping up with our mains revision and a concluding thought.
Section 1. Economy, Trade, and Fuel.
So, tracing the recent petrol hike, it really is a massive chain reaction, and it all starts with India's static dynamic pricing policy. You see, the trigger here was Brent crude touching a 4-year high, thanks to the conflict in West Asia. And this naturally leads to what oil marketing companies call an under-recovery. Now, what is that? It's simply the gap between the market price and the selling price. It is not a direct accounting loss. Because of this, the center then had to step in and adjust the windfall tax, which, if you remember, is that levy they introduced back in July 2022 on excess profits. And finally, that brings us to the current event, a 3 rupee retail price hike. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it's absolutely crucial to understand that while we technically have dynamic fuel pricing that's revised daily, global geopolitical shocks absolutely 100% dictate our baseline. Now, what's really interesting here is a classic prelims trap. Listen closely. Do not confuse the merchandise trade deficit with the broader current account deficit. As our exports hit $43.6 billion in April, merchandise exports actually grew by 14%. And hey, that is fantastic news for our foreign trade policy target of hitting $2 trillion by 2030. But beware of the trap. The trade deficit only looks at goods. The current account deficit, or CAD, is a much wider net. It includes those physical goods plus net invisibles, things like services and remittances. So always read the question carefully to see if UPSC is asking about merchandise specifically or the overall current account.
Moving swiftly to Section 2, Polity, Governance, and Judiciary.
Okay, don't get tricked here regarding the NEET UG paper leak. The National Testing Agency, or NTA, is merely a registered society. It is not a statutory or constitutional body. It was actually established back in 2017 under the Societies Registration Act. Now, with this whole recent paper leak and the resulting CBI arrests, the exam is naturally shifting to a computer-based test, a CBT. But remember, just because it's a CBT doesn't mean it's an online exam you can take from home in your pajamas. It's heavily monitored and conducted at designated centers. And on a structural level, remember that education sits squarely in the concurrent list, which is exactly what empowers the center to regulate these higher education standards through bodies just like the NTA. So the Election Commission just announced Phase 3 of the Special Intensive Revision of Electoral Rolls. Now, when you hear electoral rolls, your brain should instantly jump to the Representation of the People Act 1950, the actual conduct of the elections that is governed by the RPA 1951. Right now, the ECI is navigating controversies over mass deletions in the rolls due to some faulty software. So to keep it simple, rolls mean the 1950 Act, period. Also, a quick refresher, the ECI itself is an Article 324 constitutional body, not a statutory one. Keeping these fundamental distinctions crystal clear is going to save you in the exam hall. The MP High Court's Bojala verdict is absolutely crucial right now. But keep in mind, while the Places of Worship Act of 1991 generally freezes monument statuses exactly as they were back in 1947, Ram Janmabhoomi was explicitly exempted from that. In this case, the court ruled the 11th century Bojala complex is a temple based on an official ASI survey. And, since it's an ASI monument, it directly falls under the Amisar Act of 1958. Honestly, it's a perfect example of how current, day-to-day judicial decisions are constantly intersecting with these older historical statutes and their specific exceptions. All right, let's rapidly clear a few more GS2 updates. First, the Manipur Commission of Inquiry just received its 5th extension. The trap to watch out for here, commissions of inquiry are purely advisory, they are not binding. Second, really notice how the brand new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita has now fully replaced the old IPC and fresh bail cases, just like we saw in the Varanasi boat iftar incident. Sections 196 and 299 of the BNS are your new go-to reference points for promoting enmity and outraging religious feelings. And finally, just keep a peripheral eye on the shifting coalition dynamics in Kerala politics, especially V.D. Satheesan's rise, for your sociology or political science optional contexts. Section 3, IR and Internal Security. Looking at the intense geopolitical stakes of the Trump-Xi summit, be very aware that G2 is strictly an informal concept. It's a phrase used by Trump, It is not an official grouping like the G20 or the G7. The summit itself heavily revolves around what we call the Thucydides trap. That's the historical tendency for a major conflict to break out when a rapidly rising power challenges an established one. Furthermore, while they spent a lot of time discussing trade in Taiwan, the key takeaway for us in India is rare earths. China absolutely dominates the processing of these materials, not just the raw mining. And let me tell you, that processing dominance is a massive, critical leverage point in modern geopolitics.
Next up, Amit Shah's recent call for a unified war on drugs ties directly to our borders. He delivered this at the R.N. Kaul Memorial Lecture, Kaul, of course, being the legendary founder of RAW. The Home Minister gave a stark warning against narco-terror states. Now, for your exams, you absolutely need to remember that the Golden Crescent, which is our primary narcotics threat route, involves Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. That is distinctly different from the Golden Triangle over in Southeast Asia. Also, make a mental note that the Narcotics Control Bureau operates under the Ministry of Home Affairs, regulating the NDPS Act of 1985.
Now, let's take a step back and look at the Sri Lankan Tamil issues spanning 17 post-war years. It brilliantly shows how the static foundations of the 13th Amendment still remain painfully unresolved today. It started with the 1987 Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, which pushed for provincial devolution and went all the way through the bloody end of the Civil War in May 2009. And yet, here we are in 2026. Despite major political shifts, like the NPP recently winning Tamil majority seats, the ground zero reality is still plagued by unresolved military-occupied lands and agricultural disputes. It is a textbook, classic case of static constitutional promises failing to meet dynamic on-the-ground realities.
While we're out here celebrating our new defense pacts with the UAE, we can't ignore a glaring vulnerability. Our strategic petroleum reserves currently cover only 10 to 12 days. That falls severely short of the International Energy Agency's 90-day recommendation. Now, the Prime Minister's visit did yield a great strategic defense cooperation framework and MOUs for crude oil storage. And yes, the UAE is a massive partner for us, our third largest trading partner, in fact. But the real exposed nerve here is our energy security. Our total SPR capacity is only around 39 million barrels. This right here is exactly why our international diplomacy has to directly serve our domestic energy survival.
Section 4. Environment, Tech, and Monsoon.
Let's talk weather. The early onset of the monsoon over Kerala is obviously big news, but the developing El Niño actually threatens to push our overall seasonal rainfall into the below normal category. The IMD is predicting the onset 6 days early. However, here's the catch. An early onset over Kerala does not mean an early onset over all of India. The real elephant in the room is El Niño, that warming of the central equatorial Pacific, which historically suppresses our monsoon. Keep the math in mind too. The long period average is 88 centimeters, and anything dipping below 96% of that is officially considered below normal.
Wrapping up our news blocks, let's look at India's massive leap into 5th-gen fighter manufacturing with the AMCA project, and an incredible conservation milestone for the Ganges soft-shell turtle in Kaziranga. For AMCA, you've got to know the division of labor. The Aeronautical Development Agency designs it, and HAL actually manufactures it. This is a huge deal. It's our very first indigenous 5th-gen fighter. Meanwhile, over in Kaziranga, the Ganges soft-shell turtle has just been successfully satellite tagged. And remember, this turtle enjoys the exact same high-level Schedule 1 protection under the Wildlife Protection Act as a tiger.
Section 5. Revision, Mains, and Conclusion. Aspirants, it is time for the UPSC arsenal. Let's lock this in. The crucial point of all of this is how quickly you can recall these linkages. So pause the explainer right here and test your ability to connect every single current event back to its constitutional or economic foundation. Can you immediately link the fuel hike to dynamic pricing and the windfall tax? Do you automatically connect the Beauchamp verdict to the AMSR Act and the Places of Worship Act exceptions? This synthesis is your ultimate diagnostic tool. If you can instantly fill in the mental blanks here, your foundational knowledge is totally solid.
Time to put pen to paper. Take these two synthesized mains questions and practice structuring your answers today, utilizing the exact static data points we've mapped out. For that first question on narco-terrorism, make sure you integrate the Golden Crescent geography and the explicit role of the NCB and the NDPS Act. For the second one on exports, you absolutely must mention that $43.6 billion merchandise milestone, but you have to critically evaluate it against broader current account realities and those 2030 foreign trade policy targets. Simply writing these out is where true deep synthesis actually happens. Let's reflect on this quote as we wrap up today's explainer. Stay focused, stay incredibly disciplined, and keep actively linking the daily news directly to your syllabus. Ask yourself right now, are you just memorizing a chaotic pile of daily facts, or are you actively building the strategic vision required of a 2047 civil servant? Keep grinding, and I will see you in the next explainer.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on Prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel. Keep up the amazing work, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next explainer.